Episode 12, 4th of July week,
Look at that.
short week.
Yeah.
Thursday off. Markets closed today at noon.
Friday's so weird though. Friday's just a weird day.
Yeah.
So weird. Friday on a July 4th, the Friday after it's a weird day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, today even the market closed at noon.
That makes no
Noon.
sense.
That makes. I don't
Why-
remember.
why
Do
would
you
you?
ever remember that?
No.
On the third. I don't either.
Not once.
Doesn't the market stay open on like Christmas Eve all day too?
Yeah, it's and then you're
But
closing
yeah, we're closing early on July
Yeah.
3rd.
Yeah, I don't.
on a
it's
Wednesday.
an odd
I could
duck.
see if it was like a Thursday.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Then you got
'Cause
to
then
roll
you
into
you
Friday.
roll right into Friday, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and then they go full day on Friday, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, the New York Stock Exchange didn't check with us three.
Yeah.
on
the-
the scheduling of.
I don't know how I missed the email. I guess.
Not important enough, I guess. Well, anybody doing anything fun?
Well, I mean, I live on a lake, so it'll be playtime and not more my kids than me. They got friends coming over, so they'll be on the pontoon and jet ski playing around.
Keith
And
will be sleeping on the pontoon's couch.
pretty much, that's where it is, whether it's a couch in the house or the couch on the pontoon. But
You'll find it.
that are working, so outside.
Yeah.
Jeremy,
I am going to try to avoid fireworks. I got a hot take about 4th of July.
oh boy,
Fireworks and turkey are the two most overrated things of holiday that we have.
turkey as in Thanksgiving, or
Turkey and
I was saying, I hope
Thanksgiving,
you're not mixing
and
that with
and fireworks on the 4th of July.
Well, Thanksgiving isn't the turkey; it's all the extras that are fun.
But why then
I don't know.
then make
That's a
some
good
chickens
question.
because
Yeah.
turkey is just a dry, terrible version of a
Oh,
chicken.
boy. And what was no
So
fireworks?
no.
What's wrong with that?
The fireworks themselves, the 10 minutes of the finale is great. It's the 2 hours before and the 2 hours after that are just awful. Going to a place to try to to see fireworks, I hate places where there's massive crowds and no assigned seating, because then you got to get there super early to try to get any seat, and I'm too lazy to do that.
No.
So it drives me nuts.
That's first row NBA guys. Okay.
That's exactly right. Assigned seat.
Yeah. We're not doing anything fun.
No,
Just hanging out with the kids. Got to finish up a couple projects around the house. Hopefully get out. I think Saturday's supposed to be nice.
yeah, I think so.
So I think hopefully get out of the house for a little bit on Saturday. But
Nice.
other than that, we're just kind of hanging out.
Yeah, you got
And-
younger
and-
ones. So
I was
it's
going to
we-
say
a
you're
little-
at the
little
age
different
of
game.
we just
And
hang out and
Yeah.
it's
we
great.
try to avoid fireworks too, or we don't really like them because our dog goes crazy. Like
Hmm.
he's so scared of them.
Yeah.
So then it's not fun at all.
Is
So-
he traumatized for just the time they go off, or for like days after? I never knew that.
Not days, but it's like a solid hour that after.
You got to calm him down.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
when fireworks
that's a
go
bummer.
until 10:30, we're up until 11:30 midnight.
He
trying to
I think
calm
he's
him
I think he's traumatized because he doesn't have assigned seats.
He had to put his blanket down 3 hours beforehand.
All right. Well, we just passed June 30th, which means first half of the year's over.
Yep.
So, in your guys' opinion, what was the hottest topic of the first half of 2024?
You want me to lead off?
Sure.
I'm going to take
Yeah,
your
go ahead.
thunder, dude.
Yeah, you're
Sorry,
gonna take
but
my thunder, but
it's
I'll
artificial
pile in.
intelligence. It's not even close. Like,
Yeah.
the Fed and all the other stuff that happened is ancillary to what may be, what people are looking at now as the biggest secular trend since the internet, since the invention of the internet, if you
Mhm.
will. So I don't think it's close. We had a company go from basically, 2 trillion in growth in 6 months?
Yeah.
That does not happen.
Yeah.
And is now the largest company in the world. We had the largest company in the world that people maybe 2 and 3 years ago probably never heard of. I think that's
So, do you
that's
think
very
that the
different.
hottest topic was AI or was it NVIDIA specifically?
I
mean,
would
they're kinda
I
s-
would say it's AI the category, and just hand in hand with that goes
NVIDIA being the poster
NVIDIA
child, right?
is the
Yeah.
star of AI, right? So they're up, I think it's 150% year to date. Just a perspective, the S&P is up 15%. I think I read a stat yesterday was saying that they drove almost 5% of
that
return.
15?
Yeah, so a third
Yeah.
of the S&P's return for the first 6 months is due to NVIDIA, and the next 5% was by the next couple largest companies as well. So the top 5 or 6 companies made up 10% of that 15%. So you really had to own those to participate in what the market's done so far. I think that is the story, and AI is the story, and NVIDIA is the poster child of it.
Yeah, your top 6 stocks in the market now are over 30% of the index, and they're all AI influenced. So
wasn't the top 10 now 37?
Yeah.
I think was the last number I saw.
yeah, but the top
37%.
10 includes companies that aren't really considered like AI beneficiaries,
Right.
but the top 6 all are
Yep.
at this point now, and they're all huge and they're all growing quite well. So I think it's by far the biggest story.
Yeah. What do you think the hottest topic of the second half is really going to be? Is it going to continue to be AI?
I mean, I think the topic, which may not necessarily impact the market, which we like to talk about, I think the hot topic was AI / NVIDIA the first half. The second half is going to be elections. I think that's just that's going to suck the oxygen out of the news story. Doesn't necessarily mean that's going to impact the markets, but I think that will cause some volatility, which could impact some areas. I mean, generally speaking, we always tell investors and our clients, put your election, thoughts aside from how you invest. And I think that's going to have to be our message going forward, but I think it's going to be a little bit difficult this next 6 or 5 months. What do you think, Jeremy?
Yeah, it is our job to tell them that. Will they listen to that? I don't know. That's, because it will be constant and we're already seeing it now, right? I mean, we had our first debate. How you feel about that one? Whatever. But I think most people are like,
Jeremy.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
No, I'll tread hard. I think most people were like, oh boy, in either way, shape, or form. But from that side, that kind of now kicked it off, right? Because now you have this news cycle and whether Biden's going to be replaced and all the other fun stuff that's going along with that. And who knows where any of this goes. That's why it's going to be so talked about, right? Is no one knows. No one knows where this is going to be. You can look at, the betting markets and all the other fun stuff about who's going to be in the office. And we'll definitely be paying attention to what's happening, but no one really knows. But it will be constantly talked about. And so I would have a hard time believing anything else will supersede that unless we have some massive economic or political or geopolitical calamity. I mean, obviously that can always happen. But outside of that, I don't see anything superseding the election as the most talked about topic. Right. And again, how we react to it, that's what our job is telling people what we're going to do, which is honestly usually very little, to be completely honest with you. We're going to know what's going on, but we're not going to take a lot of actions on things that are speculative in nature and things that, frankly, over longer periods of time have less influence than what companies are actually doing, which is the more important component. So from our side, it's probably, it is the story of the second half. And our job will be to making sure our clients know what our thoughts are there and that portfolios generally are going to be fine either
way. What do you think this story is going to be different from Jeremy there?
I would generally agree. I think I still think there'll be focus on whether or not the Fed does cuts, but I think it's going to be, again, politics. And I think as we get closer to the election, it's going to be more about who has the majority in the polls and what do their policies dictate on what's going to happen to companies. And I think we've already started to see a little bit of that. Like earlier this week, we saw interest rates spike. Speculation is that it was on people paying attention more to the policies of who might be in office. So I think it's just going to create a lot of volatility, but I think generally speaking, it's going to be all about the election, and then we'll get past the election and we'll still hear about, how contentious of an election it was. And maybe we'll get a recount or depending on how.
I mean, that's a scenario that I don't want to see, is where you get into a messy election result and then all of a sudden recounts and that drags on. Then it gets more uncertainty about everything. And then I think that's where the market would kind of not be that great.
So
I'm prepared for anything at this point.
Are you?
Yeah.
Either way, I think even post-election, we'll still be hearing about the election. So I think it is what it is. We saw it in 2020, and I think it's going to be the same thing this year. So
I mean, we've had conversations too about the Fed, about their actions around the election. I mean, can they continue? They're meant to be apolitical, but can they continue to take the stances and do the things they're going to do if we're having a very contentious election? The potential of somebody to get replaced if something happens in November, all of this stuff just infuses. And again, it goes back to that. So I just, again, for stories, for things that people are going to talk about, I think it's hard to get around.
Well, actually, on that point, I saw something interesting. It was a chart of, how many times has the Fed taken action in a election year, in a non-election year, and it was actually quite similar. In an election year, there's on average 5, and I haven't done the data analysis to figure out like what those actions truly are.
Sure.
Because 5 seems a bit aggressive.
Yeah.
5 actions in a year. It seems like a lot.
That seems like a lot.
And then in a non-election year,
like a
there's
ton, actually.
6. So the Fed typically maintains their apolitical nature regardless of if it's an election year or not. It all depends on where the data shows them to make a policy adjustment.
Yeah, I haven't done the work. I'd be interested to see how that works in, and again, you don't have a ton of them, right? I mean, there's, it happens every 4 years.
Yeah.
So from that, it's like your statistical analysis isn't all that robust from the number of events, but I'd be interested to see what they do in those 6-month timeframes, like the 3 months before and the 3 months after.
Yeah.
Do they, is that considered kind of a soft pause area?
So as we talk about the election, how do you think the second half performance is going to be? Because, coming into the year, markets obviously up 15% already or thereabouts. We certainly didn't expect 15% in the first 6 months. But how do you think the rest of the year plays out with knowing that the election is coming up? Because I have some interesting data on just a general year's performance and then also an election year. So I'm just curious before we dive into that, what your guys' thoughts are on the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think that this year has been strong. I think, like you said, it's up 15%. I think that's been because economic activity has been better than people thought it would be. Everybody's, last year's calling for recession. That's been no one's calling for that anymore. Now it's just a matter of the quick slowdown. What's the Fed going to do? And then also now what we had driving the market, which you talked about earlier, has been these AI stories. So I think that probably cools a little bit. So now your question is what happens the second half of the year? I think it's going to be a grind, but I think as long as earnings stay strong like they have been for the first quarter and, last Q4 of last year, I think we can nudge up here. I don't think we see a doubling, right? I don't think we see the first half up 15, second half up another 15, but wouldn't surprise me if you get another 5% again. But I think that's going to be, we're going to be a little more volatile the second half than we were in the first half. What are your thoughts on that, Jeremy?
Yeah. History would tell you that strength begets more strength. Mm-hmm. What I'm going to use a very simple analogy is bring an umbrella with you, man. It doesn't mean that it's going to rain, but you want to be prepared for that. I think that's exactly right, is what you said before. Is I think we're just in for a more volatile environment than certainly we've experienced this since, this first half. We really haven't. I mean, April was the only negative month, right?
Yeah, just had one.
And even April wasn't like terrible. It was a 5% pullback, which can happen at any particular point in time. So I think having some level of protection from probably choppier markets and probably another correction at some point here and maybe a little bit of a deeper one. I think you should be prepared for that. Doesn't mean you sell everything. Bringing an umbrella doesn't mean you're not going to go outside the house, right? You're going to take it with you. You can still grow and you can still participate, but I would be cautious in expecting the same trajectory that we've had in the first half and the second half. It could happen, but it's rare when it does.
Yeah, so I did the analysis on the first 124 trading days of the year because we've had 124 trading days this year so far.
Okay.
So it's not like exactly the first 6 months, but 124 is pretty close, maybe give or take a few days, right? So this year's been the 15th best performing year for the S&P, going all the way back to 1928. So I looked at what happens in those best years that were even better in the second half, right? And so on average, the return of the S&P in the second half, or the remaining trading days of the year, the market's up about 2.5%. And there's some big drawdowns in there as well. But if you look at the median, it's 5.5%.
Oh, there you go. There's my 5% prediction.
So there's your 5%.
Look at you. Just throwing darts.
Yeah.
And what's also interesting is if you look at presidential election years leading up, or the second half of presidential election years, the average return in the second half of these presidential election years is up 6.4%.
Yeah.
So you kind of have, statistically speaking, you have history on your side to suggest that you could still get strong momentum into the back half of the year because strong markets beget strong markets, right? So I think it's shaping up statistically to have a solid end of year return. But again, past performance is no guarantee of future results.
Well,
there you go.
So I think the big one for me there is, again, you're equating, and it absolutely could be the case, and history and statistics would be on your side, but you're using numbers that don't happen,
Yeah.
quite often. I mean, you have 14 other times that you're talking about that have been more history, and then elections happen once every 4 years.
Yep.
So it's not like you have hundreds and thousands of samples to
Right.
work off of. So be careful about that. And I think in your last data, I saw some red in there, and
Yes.
there was some nasty red in there. So just be prepared for either scenario, but statistics and history would suggest that it's not doom and gloom. Certainly having a good first half does not suggest you're going to have a bad second half,
Just
right?
because the market's setting all-time highs. We've had what, 32, 31, 32,
30 some,
Yeah.
something
days.
like that, of new all-time highs this year.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't mean that the market has to go down.
Exactly right. And I think that's my biggest takeaway from that is that don't look at this as a general precursor of absolute negativity, but be prepared for more volatility.
Yeah. I'm a stats guy, like Tyler stats. I'm just going with that.
You just
set,
go with the flow, man?
set it and forget it. You got 5%. We'll just call it a day.
But I guess my other question then is, do you think it's based on the performance that we've had so far? Is it a good idea to take on some additional risk in piling into these AI names, or should we try to diversify a little bit and say maybe there'll be a broadening out of the market?
Gangl, go for it.
Yeah, people have been calling out for the broadening of the market for quite a while, so
Yes,
that's why it's
why I'm asking.
yeah, I know it's a little slippery slope, but here now at this point in time, I do think like last year, if you look at the numbers again, the poster child of AI is Nvidia. Their numbers for the revenue growth was over 100%, their EPS growth is over 100%. Now you're starting to normalize a little bit. At least expectations are for 35%. So as big as that base has become, it'd be difficult for them to double in a year. So I do think just a law of large numbers slowing down. Again, 35% growth is fantastic. So I do think that's going to slow a little bit, which will give some oxygen to other names in the market that you can start. I think the broadening out will start to happen somewhat, but I don't think these names are going to be massive underperformers either. So that's why it's careful. And that's kind of, even one of the portfolios I manage, it looks like, the market. And it's like, oh, how much Nvidia do I still own it? I still like a lot. How much do I want to own? Do I should sell it all and go other places? No, I'm still going to own some, but maybe I need to trim a little bit after the performance it had, but I still want to be involved with it. So it's a very tricky situation. So that's kind of where I'm at. How about you, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think I can put this a pretty easy way is it's okay to own 20% of those names, right? And instead of, those top 6 names being over 30%, if you own a little less, you don't benefit to the greatest extent, but you still benefit from that. You don't have to be at 0 or the exact amount or everything, right? It doesn't have to be either or. It can be some of each. So I think, in my opinion, again, you mentioned people looking for broadening out. I've been looking for broadening out for a while. It has not happened. It doesn't mean you shy away from those companies completely, but it probably makes sense to probably adjust over longer periods of time. Is that we're at all-time highs in concentration, right? Usually all-time highs, especially in those. Now that tends to revert itself, right? So at some particular point in time that happens, who knows when. Could 37 go to 40 for the top 10? Absolutely. Sure. I think at 30, we would have said 37 was pretty crazy, but 37 could be 40, could be absolutely, could be 50. I don't know. It'd be crazy, but you just take some of that off. You don't have to look exactly like the market to still succeed in the market.
Part of what's driven has been their earnings growth of those top names,
phenomenal.
Right? I mean, they've outperformed the market by like 5x, and that's why their performance has been so good.
Yeah.
So, but I do expect again that to slow, and then the other numbers look like they're getting better in the second half of the year. So that's where I think you can get that little bit of a catch-up
The
trade.
other thing that I was thinking about the other day was talking about earnings and the slowing and the law of large numbers. Is we're starting to get in this constraint of energy capacity. Do you think that's a inhibitor for these AI companies to continue to grow as fast as they have been? Because it takes a long time to get some of the ability to provide energy, electricity mainly for these data centers, and we can only build it so fast. So is that going to be the key headwind for these companies going forward, and possibly slow their potential earnings growth even faster than people expect?
I don't think so. I have a hard time believing that it's that, because I heard that same thing for cryptocurrency and that kind of stuff, right? Is that the energy capacity is just not there, and it kept going. So I think, and especially as we start to rotate this from adoption of just pure horsepower to actual services and software components around that adoption, that horsepower, they'll find a way. Is my usual opinion, is that chips will get faster and cheaper and easier to produce,
less on energy. Right?
Exactly, less requirements on energy. I think that's probably where they're headed right now. If NVIDIA's not thinking about that, they're going to be about half the size that they are right now. They have to think about ways to make this faster, but also less energy sucking than they are right now. And we've been pretty good at that in history. I think we're going to be good at that going forward.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a constraint, at least unless they continue this path for next several years, which I don't think, like I said, the chips will be more efficient. There'll be some other things, but I do think that it will be at some point a potential little bit of restriction, but not enough to change the overall demand of AI.
So as we talk about AI, over the years, a lot of people compare us to China, right? Whether it's the EV play, AI, just anything in general, technology driven. So I want to talk about the AI arms race of USA versus China, and just some quick stats for you guys. So if we look at if we look at the top companies that are $500 billion in market cap or higher, there's 17 of them. 14 of those are US based companies. Not one of them is a Chinese company.
I was going to say, is
4th of July,
is this a
nice.
race? I mean, we have the Olympics coming up, and this is they've been disqualified in the prelims. They didn't make the race, at least thus far.
So 14 out of the 17 are US based companies. Not one of them is a Chinese company. 8 of the 14 are tech AI focused. USA has 61, and they call it notable large language models. China has 15 as of end of 2023. Private investment in the US was $67 billion last year. China had $8 billion. So I guess the question is the US winning right now? I would suggest yes. But the question is, will we ever know who wins?
I think the US is winning right now. And obviously, typically, anytime you throw more money at anything, usually you get better results over time, or just like any participation in any sports, the more kids you have playing, the better results are going to be, generally speaking. I think that's where we are now. But with AI, who knows? Maybe one, just because of a large language model, maybe AI or China has one that's far superior than the other one. So that's why it's hard to say. But I do think the U.S. is right now is in the pole position. But we'll see. That could change in a couple of years right now.
Yeah, I guess I have one question: has China ever led on innovation? China's massive boom came from using their population to build things cheaper, faster, quicker,
buy more of,
and then using that, the money that came there as a result of that to then building their infrastructure up, right? That became them as an economic superpower. When I think of like innovation, I think the US and Japan, really. I mean, Japan in the 80s were the innovation machine. 70s and 80s, they were the innovation machine. I don't know if China's ever been like at the forefront of advancements in technology. Maybe I'm wrong, but I always think of them as leveraging what they can do better and leveraging the people and the massive amount of population, and also not having to worry about regulatory restrictions and basically just saying you are going to do this and we're going to set up a factory where you're going to sleep there basically the entire time. Those are the kinds of things that have led them to being bigger. I don't see them much as like they power the next gen of, they're leading and we're following. I don't know if that's been the case.
Yeah.
Tyler, you do the digital discovery portfolio, so obviously you're
probably more in there than we are.
So I mean, your thoughts on, are you looking at any China ETFs?
Gangl just got rid of his VHS player or something,
pretty much. Where's that couch?
I mean, there certainly are some Chinese companies in the ETFs that I'm going to hold for AI, but they're more along the lines of robotics companies. I think that's more where their expertise is probably in. And when I think about AI, a lot of people think about like ChatGPT, large language models, to aggregate all of this different data to then help you make an assessment on some type of decision, right? Perfect example, ChatGPT, you prompt it, you get an answer. And I think from the Chinese perspective, when you have state-controlled media as well, it's pretty challenging to keep a genie in the bottle when you have this large open data system.
Yep.
Right. So for them, you'd have to put a lot of governors on a large language model. So I think it's challenging for them to come out with this broad thing like a chat GPT, because it's probably not going to give the right output
that they want, the government.
Yeah. Right? Because it's kind of this open architecture thinking thing. And if you try to limit it, it's probably not going to be very accurate. So I think they're probably more focused on the robotics and creating, to Jeremy's point on the industrial side, creating those factories that are more automated and using types of AI and large language models to help them do that versus having this like chat GPT like structure.
Yeah. Cranking out the efficiency machine, right? Yeah.
I think
I get that.
That's more where they're going.
That makes sense to me.
So I think that's why there's a big difference in US versus China right now.
Gotcha.
So I don't think we'll ever, to answer my own question, I don't think we'll ever know who wins, because China's doing something totally different than us. But the other question on this is, with AI and China and US kind of being the leaders in the space, do you think they'll ever work together to keep kind of a security on AI? Or is that a hard
work
pass?
together?
I don't think they will. I mean,
No.
there's too far and kind of free markets versus not. And
because I think a lot of people's concerns is like AI can lead to
Skynet,
Right?
Terminator.
I think that's the big concern, right? Is all
Jeremy's
of a sudden,
back to his movies.
Oh, you got
no,
me right
don't.
there.
Now you got him. Well, now we're going off the rails.
all of a sudden these models become smart enough to realize that they can probably take over and control everything, right?
I think there will try to be governors placed. Will they work together to do so? Absolutely not. They want different things, and they want to control it in different ways. And frankly, they don't want to cooperate too much together. So I would be very, very. I don't think there's going to be a global regulatory body that will be able to say you have to put these restrictions on AI. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yep.
I think it's going to be up to the individual countries, and some will be more lax than others, and some will try to pivot that in other ways. We'll see how that goes, and we'll see what the ramifications are as a result of it. But I just kind of give up on global communication and coming together on anything.
Yeah, pretty challenging. All right, last subject. USA soccer. So this is kind of
Gangl fell asleep.
Spaghetti wall.
Where's that couch?
It's spaghetti wall and older versus younger. Because I think younger people watch soccer.
Yes.
I don't think older people watch soccer.
I watch soccer.
Well, okay.
Yeah, he is older.
And I'm older. I'm always on the faction of older versus younger here.
You're also the major sports fan out of everybody.
Yeah.
You'll watch anything except for hockey.
Well, yeah, that's a little mind-boggling. From the state of hockey, we got a guy that will watch soccer, which obviously.
Can I give you my real hot soccer take?
Okay.
It will be within 10 years. It will, if it hasn't already, from attendance, from revenue generation, from national approach, it will overtake baseball if it hasn't already. There's no question about it in my mind.
Funny.
It fits the younger generation so much better than baseball ever does.
That's interesting. I did look at some stats on viewership, and obviously in the U.S. it's true football, the one with the elongated football, right? Not the not the round ball soccer. So it's
proper football.
Yeah, but then it's NBA is rocketed up there, because I would have put NBA a few years ago back towards baseball, and I think that's kind of maybe to your point of where soccer is that younger demographic that could pass baseball.
Yeah, I mean, just think
right now it's neck and neck with hockey. I did see some. That's a year or two old, so maybe it's ahead of hockey by now.
Yeah,
hopefully not.
I think the biggest thing holding, well, you mentioned USA soccer, and sorry to go on a little tangent here, but USA, I think the biggest thing holding soccer back in the US is that we don't have the best athletes, and we hate that, right? Is that we have the best basketball players, no question about it. We have best football, there's no question about that either. Soccer, our MLS is not as good as other leagues, and I think that drives Americans crazy. Like, they don't want to watch a sport that they're not watching the absolute apex athletes in there, and then that puts them overseas and they're watching it at 7:30 in the morning. So there's a difficulty there. I think if the MLS starts really throwing money and getting the athletes, the top tier athletes before they're 40 years old, I think soccer could explode as a result of that. Again, it just fits it's done in 2 hours. It is running clock. There's no breaks outside of the halftime. And, they look at what Europeans do and have some fun on those pitches and in the fields and that kind of stuff. It's an entertaining time, even though the sport, I think, from our perspective, is probably not as entertaining as the other ones we watch.
Well, like for me in high school and college, we always watched, not a lot, but we started watching soccer.
Okay.
It wasn't.
Did you play growing up?
I mean, like youth when I was like 7 years old.
Oh, that doesn't count. Not like high school.
Nothing like serious.
Okay.
No, but like
that's right. You're playing hockey.
We always like whenever we had high school soccer games, the student section would be filled. Like it was becoming a bigger deal.
Did you even have soccer at your high school, Jeremy?
We did. The stands were not filled. They were the one they played, like we didn't even know when they were playing like half the time. And I think that's what it was. Yeah. So to hear that, I think that's when there's your older versus younger. They hear that, both of us are like, oh, really?
But then one of our investment recruiters, we were talking last week and he said this last Sunday he was going to watch 5 games.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right? So like people are just like watching it now. So I thought that was interesting, but I wanted to bring up USA Soccer because USA has
stunk up the joint again.
I think we've gone through this issue quite often at this point now. But it was the Copa America.
Yeah.
US should at least be a contender.
Right.
Right. And we won the first game, but then we lost to Panama and Uruguay and knocked us out. And it's just an embarrassing thing for USA. And I think that's also why people don't want to watch it, because it's like, you're just going to watch the Olympic team lose.
Yeah.
So what's the point of even turning it on? So now the USSF is doing a comprehensive review. I don't know what that means. I don't know if they're going to scratch the entire team or what. You assume we already have the best US players on the team to begin with.
Right.
But now the head coach might be out as well. So curious. I know you don't really watch it, but what does this mean for U.S. soccer with the rise that we've had in the last year and a half with Messi coming over to the MLS? What does this mean for soccer in the U.S.?
You want me to take that, Gangl?
Yeah, I'm going to do a hard pass.
Like, is this even English right now?
I'm still focused on hockey. Let's go back to the Goons.
I'll hit on this very, very quickly. The coach is gone. And the comprehensive review better be, we're going to spend a lot more money. And we're going to start importing people. Joel Embiid is going to be in the USA basketball team. I don't know how they figured that one out. I think he's a U.S. citizen now, but I mean, he was born in Africa, and came over. So was not born here, but I think he did become a U.S. citizen. So, I mean, it's legitimate that you could do. I think piles and piles and piles of money is what solves the problem in most instances. And I think that's what they'll do with this one. But I don't know if it's solved in, certainly not 2026 when the World Cup. Now we're going to look at as a very much a second-rate nation for that. I don't know when it is solved, but I think that's the only answer to it, is you find somebody who institutes better practices than they currently have and you throw a bunch of money at it.
There you go.
Yeah, I guess didn't we get Beckham here in the U.S.?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that all of this
end of his career.
We're like the retirement tours.
They know they can get a pretty solid paycheck, and it's not too serious of soccer.
Yeah. Well, Beckham got a piece of the club.
Yeah,
right?
He got a club, and
now Messi. Same
exactly. So you
yeah.
come in here for your retirement. You play for 2 years and you get a little retirement annuity from the from the club.
How many professional teams do we have here in the? Do anybody? I mean, since you guys are super soccer fans, it sounds like you don't even have any idea.
I don't have any idea how many teams there are.
6, 8?
No, it's more than that, but I can't remember
20?
how many it is. I think it's around there.
We have one here, right?
Yeah.
Actually, the stadium looks super cool. I heard it's a great venue to go watch an event.
So Lisa, being from Austria, knowing the stadium over there, but Allianz is a German company, and apparently ours, because it's sponsored by Allianz. Mm-hmm. So apparently it's just literally the same exact stadium, just shrunk.
Oh, no way.
German engineering, man.
Yeah.
Wow, I love it. That's cool.
So like the layout and the surrounding of it, and the architecture of it is apparently like the exact same as.
I might have to go to a game now.
Don't take my word on that. We'll have to take Lisa's.
So we'll go with that.
All right. Well, guys, enjoy your 4th of July. Have some fun. And we will see all of you next week.
Sounds good, man.
Thank you. I mean, it's all like the color map, and there was like